Welcome to 2026, fellow beings of light, to the return to one. Not just our collective return to one in the first year in a new 9-year cycle, which is an opportunity to move forward and not just repeat the 9-year cycles that came before, but also a year that will be all about returning to one within as a sovereign being of light, and then returning to one without as a member of the collective and unified consciousness from the shift in perspective, energy, and frequency that sovereignty creates. A year that, for me personally, will be all about stepping into and embodying not only more of myself, but a new role. One where I am no longer merely a transmitter that channels the guides, but become a guide myself. Whew. I think the magnitude of that, what that truly means, especially in the context of what our episode today will be delving into, is fully hitting me now. It's landing. To honor all of this, 2026 being the return to one, a blank slate, and the journey that will be unfolding for all of us during it as we return to one ourselves. I am starting this podcast over, back at episode 1, not 30, where we left off in 2025, 1, where we are beginning in 2026. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and call it the Return to One podcast. And whether that means that it will only span this year before starting at 1 again, or that it will continue beyond it, I don't know. But I don't need to know. I only need to know that this is what I'm being called to do, both within and without. And I am trusting that. I just received a single word, graduation, and a visual of how, you know, that point in a graduation ceremony where the caps are all thrown up in the air. It is meant for me, that word, but through that visual, I can feel that it is also meant for all of us. It is not just one cap. It is many, a sea of them, a literal ocean of them. And I'm not receiving it as a preview of what is to come as we navigate this journey of the return to one, but as a celebration of what we have achieved stepping into this year, into the new 9-year cycle. For the first time in not just human history on Earth, but in galactic history, enough beings of light above and below are moving forward again. Instead of fighting the flow of energy, time, and our very beings separately and collectively, instead of swimming against the current or flying into the wind by choosing to remain stuck in distortions, in resistance, in repetition of 9-year cycle after 9-year cycle that has gotten us absolutely nowhere. Enough of us that we are co-creating a momentum that will carry those that aren't ready, those that are still choosing to remain stuck, forward with the collective until they are ready to begin moving forward again on their own. That is massive. Do you understand that? I want you to take a moment and drop into that. Feel that shift, that momentum, because it is moving all around us and growing by the day, by the hour, by the minute, by the second, with every step forward that we are taking, both separately and collectively. Take that moment, drop into it. Now, I had originally intended for this first episode to be a sharing of what is coming through for the winter months and some of what is coming through for the entire year. But that would be doing things backwards. Something we have all done more than enough of over the course of 9-year cycle after 9-year cycle. We are beyond done with doing things backwards. So instead, this first episode is going to be dedicated to introducing the Oversoul consciousness that I am now fully stepping into channeling from and through for our podcast and our activations after like 6 to 8 months of being at first a little bit oblivious, then slowly dipping my toes more and more into it. And also introducing not necessarily a shift when it comes to the term unity consciousness, as we all know it, but rather introducing something that encompasses it, but also expands upon it. And I think I've already said it earlier, but I'm being called to refer to this expansion as unified consciousness. If you have been following along with us over the course of the last year, then this isn't the first time the word unified has come up. We use it in the context of our unified purpose. The purpose chosen by and for our soul prior to our first incarnation. The purpose that we collect pieces of galactically on our path to Earth, all of which we forget upon each incarnation of our souls and have to find our way back to, have to collect, have to retrieve. We use it in the context of our unified timeline, the timeline containing that unified purpose, a timeline chosen by and for our soul prior to our first incarnation, the timeline that we forget upon each incarnation of our souls, instantly beginning to create alternate timeline after alternate timeline around, and have to find our way back to, have to realign with. And now, in the context of unified consciousness, the consciousness that began as one, as source, God, however you want to refer to it, the consciousness that, just like our chosen purpose was separated into pieces, and just like our chosen timeline was separated into alternate timelines, was separated into sovereign beings of light galactically, what is known as our galactic monads. And because those beings couldn't find their way back to a unified consciousness, to oneness, they were separated once again into 6 separate fragments of consciousness that were removed from their being and became souls, sovereign beings of light, destined to incarnate on Earth in human bodies. Earth, a melting pot of beings of light, representing various fragments of consciousness and various fragments of the galactic races above, all together, all in one place, all on one planet, with the overarching mission of getting it right this time, finding our way back to a unified consciousness, to not just oneness, unity, but to a oneness composed of many, unified. Are you picking up where I'm guiding us? A oneness composed of many. Because it is also the consciousness that, just like the many pieces of our chosen purpose must be unified to become one again, and just like the many alternate timelines revolving around our chosen timeline must be unified to become one again, that consciousness must be unified to return to oneness, to return to one, not the same one that it was before, a one that was a single being, a single entity, source, God, whatever, but rather a one that is composed of many. Our pieces and alternate timelines unifying back into one with oneself, reawakening back into the consciousness of a sovereign earth being of light that is one within. The consciousness of that sovereign earth being of light, unifying back into one with its fellow 5 consciousness fragments, with the galactic monad they were separated from, reawakening it into the consciousness of a sovereign galactic being of light that is once again one within. And all of those unified consciousnesses, each unified sovereign earth being of light, and each unified sovereign galactic being of light, one by one, reconnecting back into the consciousness that began as one and ultimately will return to one, to a oneness now composed of many, a unified consciousness in the form of an oversoul consciousness, a connection composed of the individual consciousness of all who have reawakened into oneness within and into oneness without. I don't know about all of you, but that was a lot. Deep breath with an audible sigh if you are feeling it. It was definitely a lot, but this is important. Understanding unified consciousness and oversoul consciousness. So I'm going to try to simplify it, or at least present it in another way, in a story. We are going to visualize a triangle. Visualize the Trinity in the form we are most familiar with it: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We start in the beginning with a void. No triangle, no lines, no separation. Just source, God, whatever. Oneness. That oneness decides to create beyond itself, to become a father. The tip of that triangle then extends outward in a straight line, descending as the Father separates himself into sovereign galactic beings of light who become the sun, a corner of the base of our triangle. That single line alone between them couldn't figure out how to, or quite honestly, maybe couldn't, bring those 2 points back together again as one. And together, those points couldn't contain the void, oneness. So that corner of the base extended in a straight line outwards as well, as the sovereign galactic beings of light separated themselves into fragments of consciousness, into souls, into sovereign earth beings of light, who became the Holy Spirit, the second corner of the base of our triangle. Now, these 2 lines alone between them, again, couldn't bring the 3 points back together again as one either. They couldn't contain the void, oneness. They would just overlap each other if they tried to come together. They would return to a single line that still had 2 separate points, right? So our second corner of the base extended in straight lines outwards from itself. Only it did what the other 2 alone could not do. It did so in 2 separate straight lines that reached out to meet the other 2 points, the Father and the Son, where they were at. Not at first, though. First, the sovereign earth beings of light began to reconnect with each other and then themselves, to not only remember all that had been forgotten, but to add to it from all that they had learned and became in the time in between. The journey to collecting their pieces and the experience of their alternate timelines. And then they individually and collectively began to reconnect beyond themselves with the sovereign oneness that created them all. Source, God, whatever. Began to reconnect with the Father. And then they began to reconnect with the sovereign galactic beings of light above as guides, and then as the monads that their consciousness fragment, their soul, separated from. And in doing so, in reconnecting with both of the other points at the same time, they formed a triangle. 3 lines that together could contain the void, oneness within them. A void, a oneness that contains the consciousness of all who have made those reconnections with Source, with their monad and those above, with self within, or using the analogy with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the soul, an oversoul consciousness. An oversoul far larger than the raw oversoul that produced the law of one, far larger than the oversouls often referenced by channelers, the Pleiadian collective, the Arcturian council, the order of Melchizedek, the Elohim, the Galactic Federation, and so on and so on. An oversoul consciousness that is infinitely expanding as each unified consciousness of the reawakened returns to it, whether sovereign earth beings of light or sovereign galactic beings of light. An oversoul consciousness that contains all of the reawakened, a oneness composed of many. Again, I want you to take a moment and drop into that. Feel into that. Meet it not with resistance and not with acceptance. Most of you are not there yet, but rather with curiosity. Allow yourself to ask questions, to feel into what feels true to you as you receive answers to those questions. What feels resonant to you? I'm guessing some of those questions might be, how does she know this? How can she share, speak about these things with such certainty? Those are easy questions for me. It is because I channel through and from what is known to me as the Alren Oversoul. Alren, all of the reawakened, all who have undergone all that we just walked through. Earth and galactic ascended masters, archangels, star mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, and so many more within it. It first came into my conscious awareness during the summer of 2024, exactly a year into the journey that has been my most recent reawakening moment and opportunity. And at least 6 months before I even recorded my first podcast episode or activation, before I even began actively channeling for others and the collective. At the time, it gave me a name. Not Alren, not yet, but Evren, which by Earth definitions means the universe, the cosmos. At the time, I was like, this is so cool. I'm being given a soul name. That's me. I'm Evren. It's really hard to believe that was 2 years ago, to believe how much has changed within and around me in that time. I knew nothing back then and know everything, or at least way more now. Needless to say, it wasn't a soul name. My soul name is Jessa, not Evren. I realized that pretty quickly when about a month and a half, 2 months later in my journey, I received a direct message along with a second clearly connected name, Alren. Evren, Evren, and Alren, Alren. When I tapped in, asked for understanding, what I received at first was a visual of a lotus flower, a symbol of rebirth, known as Ren, Ren in Japanese. And when I tapped in even deeper, what I received was that Evren is all those above and below who are on the eve of reawakening. Eve and Ren. They are those starting to remember, starting to reconverge, to take steps toward and into their unified purpose, timeline, and consciousness within. And Alren is all those above and below who have reawakened. All and Ren. all of the Reawakened. In case you were wondering, nope, Ascended Master status as we know it is not a requirement. I am among those within the Alren Oversoul, and I am not there yet. I still have some work to do before I'd call myself an Ascended Master like Buddha or Tara. But I'm aware and in the energy and frequency that will get me there. And that is more than enough. Receiving the meaning behind those two names was another, this is so cool moment. Not just because of what I had received, but because of what it was opening up within and without for me. That knowledge, I didn't quite understand what it meant. I knew absolutely nothing about light work, about galactics, about monads and light bodies, about oversouls, or any of that at that point in my life and journey. Up until that point, my focus had been on Reiki and shamanism, energy channeling, and on my earth-based psychic and intuitive abilities, including spirit channeling. Both forms, something I've been able to do since I was a child. But after receiving it, that knowledge, it opened the door to channeling from above, to working with light codes and light language, to putting together my first website, podcast episodes, and activations just over a year ago. It opened up an entire world, or an entire universe beyond myself and the bounds of Earth. One I had never known. I stepped into that universe. I built my knowledge. I did the work. I served my role at the time, stepping into and embodying, becoming a transmitter, a channel of galactics, ascended masters, and archangels. That is how my channeling with them started, building more and more guides that I worked with. And along the way, finding out that a lot of them were something far bigger than how they originally came to me. Then we hit the summer of 2025, 2 years into the journey that has been my most recent reawakening moment and opportunity. And I found myself starting to channel an oversoul, which up until a few months ago, I had convinced myself was just my team speaking to me as a group instead of one-on-one. After all, they were all there. I couldn't fathom that I was channeling something far bigger and more expansive. Probably should have realized, considering the massive things that I began being asked to transmit and co-create with my listeners and the collective at the end of the summer and into the fall. We reclaimed the feminine flame and reconciled the divine feminine and masculine. We initiated collective momentum of 0 point energy. We reclaimed the diamond blueprint of creation. And then reseeding and recoding Earth and human design with it across 13 different Earth nodal points, activating and initiating it. And then activated and initiated expanded oneness between above and below with it, which meant a shift in the balance of those above that were in favor of believing in our ability as sovereign earth beings of light to close the triangle we talked about earlier, to initiate the return to oneness, the return to one. July through September were crazy. The level of things we were achieving together, not just through my recordings and work, but the recordings and work of others as well. All of it setting into motion what was needed for as many as possible to be ready for the choice point we faced at the end of 2025, the end of the last 9-year cycle. The choice between staying stuck and repeating another 9-year cycle, or finally moving forward again, back to one. We did that. We set it into motion, and then we made the choice to move forward. Enough of us did. That graduation, that celebration, back when we started today, celebrating what we have achieved with all of that. Like, just stop for a minute and wrap your arms around yourself. Even if you're around others and it would be weird, and tell yourself, repeat, I am proud of you. I am proud of you. I am proud of you. You deserve that. You are worthy of that. And I'm proud of me, not just for having a role in transmitting and facilitating all of that, but for finally allowing myself to acknowledge my place, my seat at the table within the Alren Oversoul over the course of fall, finally believing that I was worthy of something that massive. And now, as we step into 2026, into the return to one where I hope to continue my path to closing in on my unified timeline, because I can feel it within reach. I am proud of myself for beginning to step into and embody my place within the Alren Oversoul and the shift closer it is bringing me to my unified purpose and timeline. A shift from, again, no longer being just a channel for the guides, but being the guide myself. I am excited for that. I am excited to begin sharing all of that with you through this podcast and our activations. And I am excited to work closer one-on-one with any of you that are feeling the pull to, or that are stepping into your unified purpose, your unified timeline, your unified consciousness within and without. Whether it's through our individual 6 degrees of soul separation offerings, remembrance, release, retrieval, realignment, reconciliation, reconvergence. With all of them through our mentorship program, or simply a whatever wants to come through session, a cosmic consciousness Reiki session, or what's my consciousness fragment session that I am working on putting together. I am a 90, by the way. Hope and innocence, rainbow ray, all the way. Whatever it is that you need to work on, wherever you are at, if you are ready to step beyond multidimensionality into the meta dimensionality that lies beyond it, I'm here for it. I'm here for when you are ready, for when you feel the call. Maybe give me about a week, though. I'm still working on all of the shifts to our offerings that are coming from all that's coming in for 2026 in terms of the return to one. And even all that we delved into today, and that shift from multidimensional to meta-dimensional. Don't worry, I'll definitely explain what that one is in our winter and 2026 preview later in the week. I think that's it for today's episode as far as the discussion. If you choose to end here, thank you for joining me, of course. But if you would like to stay and drop in with the Alren Oversoul with me through a short meditation that will allow you to feel them surrounding you as they did during our choice point activation last week, let's do it. We would love to say hello with our energy and our frequency. Share a bit of it with those of you that are open to it. For those that are, go ahead and settle into a comfortable seated position, allowing your hands to come to rest on your knees and your eyes to naturally close. And taking 3 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. 3, releasing all thoughts and emotions flowing through your bodies. 2, opening yourself and your heart space to receive. 1, grounding into the earth beneath where you are sitting. I call forth my fellow members of the Alren Oversoul. Come forward and join me in a circle surrounding those listening to this meditation, allowing them to feel the energy, the frequency of the Reawakened, the energy and frequency that awaits them, the Oversoul that awaits them upon their reawakening, that is calling to them as they stand as Everett on the eve of reawakening, calling them back to one. Focus on your breath, continuing to breathe in through your nose and down into your heart space, then back up and out through your mouth, moving or toning, using light language if you feel called to. I am going to be silent for about 3 to 5 minutes to allow you to do so, to connect with the Alren Oversoul, as if you are already there and celebrating, throwing yet another cap in the air. able to feel that which we offer to you. Not merely energy and frequency, but an opportunity to allow yourself to begin stepping forward into more of yourself, more of your oneness within. Three more deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. One, slowly allowing yourself to become aware of the space that you are in. Two, moving your shoulders and your neck, recalibrating to your own energy and frequency. Three, allowing your eyes to open naturally when they are ready to do so. Thank you for hanging out with me a bit longer and for opening yourself up to the Alren Oversoul. Once again, Arishkati